The big red barn, as American as apple pie. Do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe button down there because it's 29 degrees outside. In the wind chill, it's even worse. So this is going to be cold, but I'm going to do it so you guys can see this anyway. A lot of times you've probably seen these barns along the road and one or two things happens. They've been abandoned, everything's been gutted out of them, or the person still uses them and everything's been modernized. This one's kind of frozen in time and we're going to walk through it. It hasn't changed in 45 years, so it's kind of neat. Let's get started. Again, please like and subscribe. Check out the previous video on the historic schoolhouse. If you like that, you'll probably like this, or if you like this, you'll probably like that. Let's get going. Back when these barns were built, the lumber they were used to be built with came right off the farm, and I'll tell you that was the case with this one. The lumber came off the hillside. There was a sawmill locally, and I don't mean locally in town, I mean locally on the farm. The lumber was cut, the barn was built all in one spot. So you can see on top, this one even has a cupola up there. They stopped doing that feature after a while. So this barn would have been made sometime after 1915. Because that is when the lumber was cut. Amazingly, it actually has a lot of its barn red paint on it still. So let's go inside if we can get it open here in the freezing. Check it out. First thing you're going to notice is it's got a wood floor, at least in this part of it. A lot of barns, they got stalls, but they don't have much for wood floors. So let's go ahead and go on in. Kind of dark in here, but I did bring a light if we need it. This is the old barbed wire they would have used to make fences out of. Even after this many years, you can see it still doesn't rust. Here's a hanging basket that's been lost to time, just sitting here. Here's a good example of how they would unroll the barbed wire. It's actually between two metal wheels, so they would have just rolled the metal wheels. You can see it's got kind of a hoop around it, so they could have just pulled that, unrolled the barbed wire that way. No modern tractors. Steam engines would have been the only thing that existed those days. Over here we have an old wash tub. This would have been probably some kind of grinder. Oh yeah, you can see right there. So I bet when I turn this, these teeth are going to turn. Yep. Huh. Oh, it's got a handle on the other side. I didn't even notice. So this could have been driven off the tractor. Back in those days, the tractor had a flywheel on the side, like your WD-40s. You could drive these type of things right off the flywheel of a tractor. I'm going to cover it back up. It's been protected in here pretty long. Yep. Alright. Pitchforks. An old hammer. Now here's kind of the typical barn that everybody's used to. You got the center aisle. You got stalls on either end. And up above you got the hayloft. And this one you actually got the hayloft with holes cut in the floor on purpose, and we'll go up there a little bit later. This probably would have been split up so you could put horses and cows in here. These are tall enough ceilings that you can put horses in, which is a key difference. Some of these barns were not as tall, and they would have been just strictly for cattle. You got a food trough. Each stall would have had a food trough, so the animal in it would have been fed, grained. He would have had to bring water. Just look at the size of the lumber used in this thing. Pretty impressive. What do we got here? We have a bunch of old metal, old iron, old gears. But what is it in? See if I can back up and get a better picture for you. Oh, it just set on. Kind of almost looks like they took a wagon and just made a storage compartment out of it, honestly. Maybe they did. I'm not 100% sure. That looks like an old stove door with the cast engravings on it. That's the spring for a buggy right there. That would have been a buggy seat. You can see not much has gone on in this barn in a lot of years. There's a old farm equipment seat made out of cast iron. This is a little eerie, but check all this out right here. So this has just sat on this wall, hanging here, not used for, I don't even know how long, 40, 50 years. So here you got your horseshoes. Here you got bridles. That's a bit for a horse. This is an old bag. I don't know if I can. Looks completely empty. More horse bridles and bits back here. This is the kind of stuff you normally don't see. This is the kind of stuff that eventually just disappears with time. Look over here. Look at this. Here's more equipment for the horses. Look at. So if they had to pull a plow or something, that would have went around the horse's neck. Same here. All this equipment was, if you had draft horses, this is what you would have used back in the day. Not 100% sure if that's even a. It might even be an umbrella. I'm not even 100% sure what that is. Or first I wanted to think it was a crop, but I'm not sure. Look at this. You would have had stuff to hook horses up, hook them to equipment. This is kind of eerie. I mean, I have the light on. Look at more over here. If I turn the light off, this is what I'm seeing without the light on. This is kind of eerie, but this is what these old barns look like. And I bet you won't find them like this anymore, where they just been left, but they still have all the old equipment in them. So this would have this would have went around the horse's chest. Just all this different leather. All this different leather. Would have been to hook up horses. Now it's just been sitting here, not touched or seen the light of day. Here we got a saddle. Isn't that cool? Look at that saddle. If you go down here to the stirrups, these are solid wood stirrups to give you an idea of when they were made. Even more modern saddles these days don't have wooden stirrups. And this would have been some kind of English saddle, because a Western saddle should have a horn here. So this is an English saddle, if I had to guess. So you can see on this side where it's coming apart, the saddle's just wood underneath with leather over top. It's old bottles, more horseshoes, a little hammer. See if there's anything in here that's... That's what I figured. Squirrels got into that. Canvas material. This is probably a tool to work with some of the equipment here. So just look at this. This is what it would have looked like back before modern farm equipment. This is what your barn would have looked like when you still had to pull tools with a horse. When they said saddle up the horse and buggy, we're going into town, this is what they meant. I can't imagine there's too many barns out there that aren't restored or kept as like museum pieces that still have this stuff in it. I'm betting all the barns that are falling apart, this stuff is missing, and all the ones that still have it, it's specifically a museum or something where they're specifically keeping it in good condition. But it's kind of eerie, all of it just hanging here in the dark. Like I said, if I turn the light off, that's my view. All right, well, let's go check out the upstairs. You can see the other second hole from the floor of the upstairs. So this is where we came in. Right next to it, there's these wooden steps. And again, this is a little fancier than a lot of stairs, because a lot of stairs would be open and not have the side here, and the boards here really are just irrelevant. Most barns don't have them, but this one is slightly fancier as far as barns go. We go on up the stairs. We got some really nice preserved wood wagon wheels. Had these things been outside, they would have long since been rotted on one side, but they've stayed up here. They've stayed nice and preserved. We look above, we have even more horse equipment, implements. I wish I could really get up there to see what's up there. Here we have another seat out of a buggy. The material is pretty gone, but you can still kind of see this would have been nice and fancy back in the day with all the buttons and stuff when it was nice. Looks like it kind of was a blue color. But this would have been your seat back in the day when you saddled up the horse and buggy and went to town, as they say. Let's continue on over here. This is a machine that most farmers back in the day would have had. This is a feed cutter, essentially. Not this barrel part, that's just thrown on there, but this is a feed cutter, the rest of it. This is a ironic name, but I think that was about 1895. You can Google that if you want to. And it might even have a patent date or something on the side here. Number 5E. Somebody Google that and tell me exactly what year it was made, but I'm guessing 1895-ish. It's probably when that was made. So this would have been your feed cutter. Let me show you how this works. So I can take this off here. This is your feed cutter. So how does this work? This is driven by this pulley. This pulley is driven by this belt here. So this belt went around the pulley. You can see the hole right there. You would have parked your steam engine, or in the later days, your tractor with the flywheel on the side, but originally your steam engine. Would have parked your steam engine down there, ran this belt on down around there, back up here. This would turn your flywheel. And you get your corn, or your straw, or your hay. You feed it in here. You can even see this kind of turns. So this would turn, take your corn stalks in. This huge flywheel here will come around with this really sharp blade right here and just continuously chop, 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 basically make silage for your animals. Back in the day, it was pretty much standard practice that farmers had one of these. It was considered a better way to feed. You can cut everything up, smaller chunks, and feed it to your animals. So I'm sure some fingers were lost in the day, because if you got your fingers in that, it was not going to stop. I'll go ahead and put this back on. All right, let's check out the next thing. So this is obviously on the second floor. So how'd they get the straw and hay up to the second floor? Well, we didn't have hay bales back then like we do now, round bales or square bales. You just had loose hay. So this is how you got the hay in the barn. This ran all the way down the track, across the ceiling, all the way out the end of the barn. You lowered it down, ropes out there. You grabbed the loose hay. You brought it back in, brought it down wherever you wanted it, and dropped it. So this had a rope system to do that. Even if you look at the other end, it's got more pulleys and stuff. This is actually a wood pulley. Here we got a metal pulley. So that was your system to get hay in and out of the barn. This kind of gives you a whole view of the barn. For those that want to see how big the barn is and what they look like, this was how they were built. This is a pretty standard design for the barn. These days, it seems like homeowners like to reclaim the wood in these barns, which I guess, unfortunately, as they get old and get torn down, at least some of the wood gets reused. Because, I mean, if you look at the size of the wood floor compared to like my foot or something, the tree that they were using to make this wood floor was over a foot wide. So back then, that was nothing though. In fact, this one has some kind of, if we look down, it's some kind of, I don't know. Somebody tell me what this is. Some kind of track that is built that runs the length of the barn. I'm not 100% sure what the purpose of that was. Oh, here we go. Speaking of getting loose straw into the barn, this, when you put tension on it, if it's one, this one's rusted, but down here, you can kind of see on that side, these little spikes come out. These little spikes on either side, that could grab on to stuff like hay, and that would actually be used to hoist it up into the barn. So that would actually be on the end of the rope for that assembly that I showed you earlier. Not much in the rest of the barn here. But I just wanted to give you an idea of, hey, here's what the old barns that you drive by on the road look like outside. Tack room especially, the tack room is just neat. Now we're right underneath the cupola that I showed you from the outside earlier. All right, I want to show you one other building before we get out of here. Just because it has some old farm equipment in it. I appreciate you watching. If you ever wondered what the inside of these old red barns that you see along the side of the road look like, especially 50 years ago, now you kind of know. Let's check out that last place. So this looks like it used to be a wagon frame, and it actually has the rear axle still in it. You can see it's a wagon frame. The front axle is off, sitting in the ground. Stuff's just been piled on it over the years, but that looks like that one board there with the metal could actually be like the tongue of the wagon. We go over here, we have some more metal wheels, which you'll find these in farms all across America. No chainsaws back then, so it would have had a saw blade. Old sprinkler cans. Here's some old farm equipment, because it still has the metal wheels. So bunched up, I'm not even sure I can, oh here. So it looks like that would actually been a little bit of a disc there and would have plowed. So that would actually been to till the fields. There might be a second piece of equipment kind of mangled in with that one, but definitely been lost to time. Here's a wooden handled plow. You would have had to have that pulled by a horse. Here's a planter. This is pretty neat. This is in kind of preserved condition, so this is a patent date of August 2nd, 1881. It's all mechanical. You would have put seed in here. It would have dropped down into here in these little funnels. Would have slid on down, and this would have been your planter. It would have put a seed in the ground each time. It dug a little little row. All right. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I just wanted to give you a quick tour of what life looked like 100 years ago, 50 years ago, depending on some of the equipment we saw was different eras. But if you've never been in some of those barns that you pass on the highway, that's kind of what they look like. So I hope this was kind of an informational, educational video. I appreciate you watching. Like and subscribe. We'll do some more. Have a good one.